I will consider this project an overwhelming success when I can see other people using the data for what we've intended it for. So when I see students, people from other universities doing their own projects, maybe even citing the fact that they came to our data hub, that would be great. I would love that. My name is Ben Lewis. I am from Charlotte, North Carolina, born and raised. I'm currently a master's student pursuing a master's degree in technology and public policy at MIT. I'm a part of their policing lab, which is a part of their initiative on combating systemic racism.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessie Xingyi Han. I am a PhD student at MIT IDSS and a research assistant at MIT ICSR, the policing vertical. So my research interests are in fair causal inference for decision making in social science and life science.
My main project involves using AWS services to create a data hub as well as a website for other researchers to come to and utilize in their own criminal justice related projects.
My aspiration is to develop more effective computational tools that can help uncover the hidden causes and root reasons behind the inequalities that persist in our society. But I mean, my goal isn't just to understand these inequalities, but also trying to be a voice for change. So I'm very passionate to advocate for policy reforms that can lift the marginalized groups and break down the barriers that hold them back.
With this data hub, we are trying to address a few societal issues, right? And I've been talking about this already, but over-policing and incarceration really only mask the problems that we have in the society. Additionally, they create more problems for marginalized and disenfranchised communities. When people go to jail or go to prison, they typically lose work, right? And so because of that, they lose money. And that financially impacts them, their families, their children. And that can lead to a cycle of poverty and just financial instability. So a huge purpose for me doing this project is to stop that so that families, particularly people who are part of communities that are already marginalized, don't continue that cycle of financial destruction and financial ruin.
When I first started with this project, I noticed one thing is that the criminal justice process in the United States is a multi-stage process that involves several different stages and multiple people. A lot of things start with like a 911 call, and a person calls the 911 and the dispatcher dispatches the police to the crime scene, and then some suspect gets arrested, and later the people go to the court and then later on to the jail. So in this sense, like this entire process involves so many different people, and the data, the information are captured in several different data sets. We hope that by doing this data hub project, we can host all data sets at one place. So the people can get a more comprehensive overview of the entire process about the criminal justice system.
I've only been working on this project for 1 year, and I've already seen, how siloed the different pieces of information are. And if you do want to get a good comprehensive story from beginning to end, we need a place like this that has all this data all in one place so people can do their own research and see that story from beginning to end. MIT IDSS stands for Institute for Data Systems and Society. They have two main initiatives. Their primary initiative is on the energy and environment front. So they have the Center for Environment and Energy Policy Research, that's CEPR. They also have MITI, which stands for MIT Energy Initiative. A lot of my classmates are part of the Energy Initiative. I, however, am a part of the ICSR, which stands for Initiative on Combating Systemic Racism.
The Research Initiative on Combating Systemic Racism, abbreviated as ICSR, is an institutional effort at MIT trying to identify and overcome racially discriminatory processes in American institutions and policy domains. Our driving force is to leverage big data and computational techniques to create normative and structural changes toward a more just and equitable world.
There's also two main graduate programs that come out of IDSS. There's the PhD in Social and Engineering Systems, and then there's the master's program in Technology and Public Policy, which is what I'm a part of. The whole idea behind these graduate programs is to apply engineering principles and data science to address policy concerns as well as social issues.
Since a young age, I have been aware of the stark disparities that plague our society, particularly the inequalities faced by the marginalized groups. So this awareness has been a driving force in my journey. And I felt a deep sense of responsibility to use the education I've received to address these inequalities and contribute to a more just and equitable society.
My motivation behind doing this project is somewhat personal. So I've had family members who've been in and out of incarceration their entire adult lives, and I've seen the impact that it's had both on my family and on my community. And seeing that impact, I've realized that a lot of the issues that over-policing and incarceration are trying to address, it doesn't really do a good job of addressing it. It kind of just puts a Band-Aid over it. And the main issues I'm talking about are poverty and drug use. Also, over-policing and incarceration leaves people economically disadvantaged. And that's another reason that I'm trying to do this project, because I want people to be able to get out of poverty and lead prosperous lives without the threat of incarceration.
My motivation is also a little bit personal. So I grew up in a small town in a developing country where the educational resources were relatively limited compared to the developed countries. However, I consider myself very fortunate to be among the few who have received much education and became the first one in my family to go to college and now grad school.
I do remember the first time we started. I was new to MIT, and everyone in my program has to have a research assistantship. And basically the main reason that I chose to come to MIT was to be a part of the policing lab in the ICSR.
Wow.
And so before the school year even started, I actually chatted with Jessie via Zoom, and she explained to me the entire project, and I was like, boom, yes, I'm in. And that's kind of what started this whole partnership. It's been really great so far.
My co-advisor, Professor Fatini, Krisha, told me that, we have a new student coming, and he's so brilliant. He has experience with the policing in the past, and yeah, so here's Ben, and he's really helpful for this project. We have been collaborating very well. The reason we want to use causal inference to understand the racial disparities in the criminal justice system, because we want to uncover the root cause behind these inequalities and disparities. We want to understand if these biases are caused by maybe the personal prejudice, for example, of the police officers, or it's more because of a social structural problem. So in this sense, once we understand the root cause, we can enforce and implement better policy changes for a better society for everyone. Causal inference helps understand if one thing indeed leads to another thing, and helps us predict what could have happened in a hypothetical world had things changed a little bit. Let's say we want to understand if studying more leads to getting better grades. It's not enough just to see that people who study more tend to get better grades, because there are other factors that are at play. Maybe those people are just naturally good at this subject. So causal inference allows us to untangle this web of possibilities. It utilizes careful analysis, control groups, statistical methods to make sure that one thing, like the studying more, indeed affects the outcome, like getting better grades, making sure that it's not just random or affected by other hidden factors. Moreover, we also want to understand the extent of such cause effects, because we probably don't want to sacrifice all our sleep time to simply raise our grades by 1 point. So in this sense, causal inference helps us understand the why and how behind things in a more precise way.
So the kind of data that you can expect to see in the Data Hub is policing data, so police stop data, as well as dispatcher calls, and we're trying to also incorporate criminal sentencing data. The issue with that is that these informations, they're siloed. So dispatch information is kept in a separate place from police stop data, which is kept in a separate place from criminal sentencing data. And that's what our Data Hub is trying to do, is trying to bring all of those different pieces of information together so that people can do research that's more comprehensive.
The Data Hub is not just about providing data. It's also about education and empowerment. We hope to teach the users how to use big data, how to do data analysis, and maybe even learn basic machine learning tools to understand and uncover the disparities in the data.
Using cloud resources is a lot more beneficial than just using local storage devices, right? We have tons of data. We have data from 40 of the biggest cities in America, spanning multiple years. We have call or dispatcher data, and we have stop data. We have police stop data. And if you want to do analysis on multiple cities throughout multiple years, it can be very cumbersome to do that on your laptop by itself, right? Using a cloud service allows you to process that data much quicker, and it's less taxing on your own personal devices. What is the technical part of this project? So, like I mentioned earlier, we have dispatcher information, we have police stop records, and we're trying to incorporate criminal sentencing data as well. We want to aggregate all of that data in a central place so that, like I said, researchers can come to it and do their own criminal justice research. Now, there's a lot of elements to making a data hub. One, we need a place to store the data. Two, we want to be able to make it easy for researchers or whoever to access the data, whether that be via a website or whether that be via a Python interface. The main technical issues we've had with this project is really a synergy problem. So we have so many different moving parts with this project, right? We have a database warehousing problem where we need a place to store the data. We want a website as well so people can go to that and download the data, visualize the data, do whatever they want with it. Before coming to AWS, we were using different products to do those different things, for data visualization, for database storage, and to create the website. But now with AWS, they have so many products that work together. So we don't have to use different products for different things. Or yeah, we're using different products, but they work well together and make the data flow a lot easier for the end consumer and for us as well.
We should have collaborated with Amazon sooner.
I was going to say that.
Yeah.
I agree. Working with AWS services has changed the trajectory of this project simply because the services are really easy and straightforward to use. The documentation is super understandable. All of the products sync together really well. I mean, going from S3 to Glue to SageMaker to Amplify, I mean, they all work together really well. And so that has definitely accelerated this process.
Initially, we just had this idea that we won't have this data hub, but we were not sure if we can accomplish this or not. But since working with AWS, we think that it's definitely feasible and we can definitely get this done in the near future.
In addition to providing data to the public, I feel like there's an educational aspect to this. There's a learning aspect. I think a lot of people are interested in using information to come up with insights, particularly in the criminal justice field, but they don't know how. And using something like SageMaker, we can teach people how to use this data in a way that benefits society, that uncovers bias, and that produces actionable insights for policymakers.
My experience using SageMaker Studio Lab for this project is very nice. First, SageMaker Studio Lab is very easy to use. If you have experience with Jupyter Notebook before, then you can get started within seconds because they are very similar. So there isn't much like a learning barrier out there that stops you from doing data analysis on the cloud. And the second thing, which is really good about SageMaker Studio, is that I no longer need to overuse my own laptop, like the computational powers on my own laptop, so that I don't need to use my laptop to run models for hours and it just simply heats up. So everything can be done like on the cloud, which is very convenient.
In research, particularly interdisciplinary research, collaboration is everything.
Yeah.
And SageMaker Studio Lab makes it really easy to collaborate. It integrates really easily with GitHub, so any sort of pooling that we need to do, if we want to house our code on Git, we can do all that. Yeah, and it just makes it really easy to get insights from one another as we're working on the project together.
Yeah, for sure. And if one person makes some changes on the web, the other person can actually see it immediately. So that makes like the collaboration very effective and convenient.
To demonstrate the types of projects that we envision people using our data for, we're going to be walking through a project using SageMaker Studio Lab. We'll be using New York City stop data, and we will be doing some simple data visualizations, some data table making, and then we will also walk through this thing called principal component analysis, which my partner Jesse will explain more in the demonstration.
One advice I'll be giving is always start with something small and then scale it up. And always trust yourself and believe in yourself that you can accomplish something. I will say this project coming to an overwhelming success if it actually influences the policymakers to come to our website to do data analysis and implement policy changes that can uplift the marginalized groups